Thank you for joining us. Welcome to today's session on Microsoft Meeting Mondays, which is focused on attendee engagement with polls and meetings. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speaker, Don. I'm bringing you on the screen, Don. Don, the floor is yours.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Appreciate that. Happy Monday, everybody. This particular topic is really a nice topic because I have been using this for a lot of the events that I've been putting on as my role, the modern communication, CSM, and focusing on Teams Phone and Teams meetings. I've been running events for the last 6 months. And, part of that interaction that I want to get from my audience is that ability to be able to, I want to quickly understand where they're at. And that can do that through these polls. And that's kind of the nice piece of this particular puzzle when it comes to Teams meetings, webinars, and we can do that. So you maybe understand what forms are, and that's really what polls are within Teams meetings. So that capability of taking that service that we have in Microsoft 365 and then bring it into the meeting so you can have that quick interactive type scenario has been great, especially since I don't have to bring another party tool or purchase another tool to be able to do those types of things. Now, granted, it is limited. Some of these other ones do give you a lot more analytics as far as overall what's going on across your environment. But really from a built-in perspective, these forms, or you'll also hear me say polls, are out of the box and you can use them right away. So a couple things to keep in mind. It is really about getting that interactivity. And I've seen myself and others when they're utilizing these types of tools is not everybody's going to come off mute, right? They're not going to come off mute, ask those questions, or be able to interact. So this is a great way to be able to get that point of need information. For example, I always go through, and as I was setting things up for my events, I always think about the questions that I really want to have answered as part of that overall flow for that meeting or that particular event. Things that will make it a lot easier for people to get their reaction. I've had companies use it for their team meetings to be able to just get that, hey, that touch point. How are you feeling? How it's going? Those types of activities is very helpful as a leader within an organization to be able to understand. So great interactivity, and and I've seen this with my own scenarios, my events where I've done surveys, post-event surveys. I get a lot more interaction with those meeting polls than I usually do on those after surveys. So being able to tailor some of those questions, I think, are very important for you as you're trying to do more within your meetings or within your events. So
Don, sorry, quick housekeeping. Are you screen sharing?
Not yet. I was just going to start that right now.
So sorry, sir.
All right, so let's kind of take a look at this and understand what you can do. So let me get my desktop up and running. Get that out of the way so we don't have to see that. All right, so I'm in here with Megan. Megan is director for our organization, and she's pretty busy with different activities. She's got a couple of meetings that she wants to be able to add this interactivity, right? So I can do this in the web version, I can do this in the desktop, and depending upon the situation, you're actually able to then, once a poll is added into a meeting, add and modify from the mobile app. But you first have to get that form or that poll inside the meeting. All right, so if I take a look at, and I have an event coming up here, this Widget ABC brainstorming session on Wednesday. So just like anything else from a Teams perspective with meetings, you got to go ahead and create the event first, right? The meeting or the event. So if I go into Megan's event that she created, you will notice up on top, I have a bunch of different apps. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this is an app. So if your organization has limited all apps, you may not see this when you go ahead and try to add that into your Teams meeting. So keep that in mind. If you're seeing that, or you're not seeing that, I should say, reach out to your internal admin to be able to see what's going on. But really what I'm trying to do is I want to add an app here by clicking on the plus sign. And when I do that, I will see all the different apps that my organization has given me. the one that you're looking for, and you can go ahead and search. Right now, it's called Forms. And you'll notice that I have that right here. Eventually, though, by the way, this is going to be flipped over and they're going to change the name. I don't know the timing on it, but it's going to eventually be called Polls. So we'll keep an eye on that and let you know when that happens. If I wanted to add this poll, right, I'll click on the Forms option, and then I will go ahead and at the add button. All right, so this will give me the capability then to be able to add polls for this particular meeting that we have coming up on Wednesday. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. What you're going to notice is that up on the top here, now I have a polls. It was a Forms app in the app picker. Now it's actually called Polls once it's added into the Teams meeting. All right, so this screen that you see here, you have a couple options. You could go in and just go and maybe it's an idea that's already here for you, right? So you could say, I can go a word cloud, or I can do a multiple choice, right? I have a couple different options here that I may want to do it, and it's all dependent upon, and what it's doing behind the scenes is taking a look at the name of the subject of the meeting and giving some suggestions, right? But these aren't going to work for me. I want to be able to go in here and click on Create New. Once I do this, I'm going to get 3 different options for adding a poll into a Teams meeting. And you will notice that it's not just giving me 3 options, but also giving me some great ideas as far as things that I may want to be able to put. So maybe I want to do a check-in at the beginning of my event that I'm doing. How are you feeling today? So I could get up and running and quickly get that added into, and I'm going to do that. Let's make this easy. Do the first one, right? So you notice that one's in here, all ready to go. If I wanted to, I could just go ahead and save as draft, and we're ready to go at this point. Some options, and we'll go through a little bit more. I can select them if I wanted to have a co-presenter be able to actually help me with this, which is sometimes a good idea. Or if I want to change to multiple answers, so it'll change it from a radio button to a checkbox, those types of things. And I can adjust these before I go. So I'm going to save this one as a draft. And so I have my first one that's in here. Now I want to be able to go and create a second one. Let's take a look at a little bit more on these. So maybe I want to do a multiple choice, right? So the multiple choice, just literally, hey, what do you want to have? What is your favorite pizza toppings? Of course, that's very relevant to the conversation. I could, and I love this feature. It gives me the capability to be able to, it sees what I'm doing and saying, hey, I would suggest, right? And I'm going to throw pepperoni, mushrooms, sausage, and really, no, I don't know. I'll go with this. And I'll go pineapple. All right, some other options that you have. And if you don't like an option, like if I threw chicken in there, right, I have the ability to go ahead and delete that from that list. And then I can edit it after the fact if I need to adjust. Talk about multiple answers, right? So now I can have people choose more than one. On top of that, you will notice that I have this ability to not necessarily share with everybody who's in the meeting. Maybe I'm trying to get an anonymous poll, and I don't necessarily need to share it with everybody, so I can uncheck that. And as a organizer or a presenter, and that's the 2 roles in here that have this capability to do that and modify these things. The organizer has access to all of this. You can go in here and say, allow co-presenters to edit the poll while in draft, right? So if I have a presenter role in a meeting, then I'd be able to go in here and make modifications to something that's already been created or create new ones for that matter. Additionally, we can go ahead and record the names, right? So if I'm doing as a check-in for, say, for instance, I need to know that they actually, part of my, I'm thinking more of like security standards or internal standards to say, hey, this person attended and they were interactive throughout the course of the meeting, then I may want to record those names, right? So I can do that very easily, and we'll throw this on for now. And I can go ahead and then save this as a draft. Similar to that first one you did, right? I did. You notice now I'm ready to go back in here and I can modify it after the fact. Let's go ahead and do a different one. You may want to throw a quiz in here, right? So right, so you can go and add your question in there and then say, you need to do X. I and add, where's the last one? You need to do Z. The way this works is it actually will automatically check on this if it's the right answer. You have to say what is the right answer for that to happen. Okay. Obviously, multiple answers if that's the case, right? In this case, it's just a general quiz. Record the names if you need that, and then of course the co-presenters if that is the case. Save as a draft. And then finally, let me just quickly go back and do the word cloud one. This is the easiest one. So basically, you saw Nick when he sent that out to you guys. And it gives you the capability to be able to do a check-in or see how people know something. Or I've used the past just to be able to say, hey, what was the most important thing that you learned out of that particular session or in today's meeting, right? So, or how do you feel? We'll even do that. How do you feel about the weather? And there's not much else, right? So you can record the names if you really want to. You can have a co-presenter help with that one. This one, we don't need to record the names. I'm just trying to get a general feel. And that's all you need to do on this. Okay, so at this point, then if you have co-presenters in that particular meeting, they'd be able to go and edit this and be able to access it. And again, this, just understand, this is prior to that meeting. So I'm ready to go in the meeting, similar to what Nick was doing. He pre-set up some polls to be able to kind of help out with today's session, right? Questions on this so far?
Let's see, nothing's come over in the chat. Go ahead and drop them in if you got one. And we got one
I got a
popping
hand
up.
raised.
Yeah, we got a small enough group. Go ahead, Kara.
Good afternoon. So I was wondering if, I don't know if this is the right time to add it, but I understand what you're doing through here. Let's say, for example, you have a meeting where you're going to disable the chat. Will Microsoft Forms polls still work in a Teams meeting with the chat disabled?
That's a great question. And yes, it will, because this literally rides as an app inside the meeting. Okay, so if you take a look, and I'm going to bring over, this is our meeting here. And I want you to notice, let me zoom in here a little bit. Notice this, right? So this is the app bar where I'm able to access, the chat or the notes or whatever. So literally, this is where the polls are. And what will end up happening is you'll still have that pop up in the meeting, but then you will also see that poll app is different than the chat app. And so, yes, you could have chat disabled, but then you could still have polls in there and you could still be able to utilize that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely.
See, I don't see any at the moment. So, go ahead and raise your hand if you have one, folks, and I'll call out when we get to it. I'm going to go ahead and drop a link into chat to just an overview of apps in meetings, just for background to kind of complement what Don said. There's 3 places these show up: inside of chat as an adaptive card, inside a pane, or over what we call the meeting stage or the middle. So in addition to polls, there's others, but that's just kind of good background to know. Just this is where these apps show up if they're enabled. A little bit farther up in the chat too, I've got a link to the admin setting where apps are enabled for a tenant.
Right. All right. So then that's how you get them into, that's one way to get them into the meeting. All right. So there's another way that you can also do, and I'm going to bring this meeting in here because I have the ability to be able to create one. I can go ahead here inside that app panel that I was talking about before. It gives you the ability to be able to create one on the fly. And this is what I did here. I literally said, I want to create a new one. Guess what? It brought this back up for me. And then I can choose multiple choice. I can choose word cloud, or I can use quiz. In here, I created one that I want to be able to push out. And you will notice that when I'm in here, I have, oops, excuse me. I have a couple options when I click on that drop down. The first one is launch, right? And that's going to launch it for everybody to be able to see in the meeting, right? But I do have the ability to edit or delete that poll. So if I were to go in and say I want to edit that poll, it brings up that poll again so I can adjust the settings for that particular poll. Just like if I was in that other window, right? If I bring this back up here, and I say I want to go ahead and edit this one, I can edit that poll, right? So you notice even in here, I have the ability to launch, even though the meeting hasn't really been started yet, and it's not going to be that effective. But I could edit it from here and it'll bring it back up. So if I wanted to add something else to my pizza list, I can do that as well, right? Same experience, just different way of getting at it. Okay. The options that we have too is I have that launch capability, just like you saw that that Nick, when he threw the other word cloud out here, I can go launch. And then that experience is everybody will get that window in the middle of their Microsoft Teams meeting. You go ahead and put your response in there, obviously hit in the submit, right? And as it's up and running, I have the ability to view results, right? Because I created it or I have a presenter, I can see the results, right? And it should be automatically updating, but for some reason it's taking its sweet time. Part of it is I probably didn't put it in there. There we go. Okay. And also notice too is if I see something that I like, I can actually hover over it and like it, right? So I can go ahead and like something by clicking on it and I can get a like, and it will actually grow in the word cloud. So I have the options of viewing results, and let me zoom in here again so you guys can see this. I can close that poll. I can see response details, so the individual response details. I can obviously review the results. I can delete the poll, but this is also another option that you have too. Export results. And you have this ability to export it into an Excel spreadsheet. It will just go into the downloads folder, you open it up, and then you will get everybody's information. Now, it's also dependent upon what you set up here. All right, so if I go in and edit the poll, and let's just say I did not have this selected, right? So it'll have an anonymous as that person, the time, the date, what did they respond to. If you put ahead and do the recorded names piece, then you're going to get that person who they're logged in as into the meeting. And their name and how it shows up in the people panel. All right, so that's what you would do after the event is to do that export to really understand, okay, so what were the answers? What was everybody looking or saying during that particular event? Now let me bring this back over. Questions?
I had an unrelated one pop up about managed mode, which we'll do at a future Monday when that goes to general availability. This gives me a little more control as a producer. Let's see, questions on polls. Yeah. Go ahead and drop into the chat or just hit raise hand. It's a relatively straightforward capability.
It is. It is. And I will tell you, though, as far as, seeing these polls, it's always great to do it within Teams. Can you see these polls inside Microsoft 365 forums? Yes, you can, because you're the one who created them. You'll actually see them and you can monitor, you can react with them. I think, Nick and I was talking a little bit ahead of that, the ability to be able to take those forms and then aggregate them into a collection, you can do that. But I don't know if that's going to really help with this, because this is really where you want to be able to look at those polls and get those taken care of and manage them. That is a great question, Liz.
It's our stumper question.
We knew this was going to come up, right? Is there a way to be able to reuse polls from one meeting to another? Unfortunately, not at this point. We don't have that ability to be able to say, hey, we've seen this before, because, you know, we can do that in forms. Like, we can reuse forms there, but this is really set inside the meeting. That information is not available as far as my past forms that I have done that I may want to reuse. And I don't believe, I have not seen anything on the roadmap saying that that's coming anytime soon.
I have not either. I'm going to drop a link to a blog post into the chat. It's a good soft skill article. So it doesn't go into any technical details, but just gives some examples of how you could use polls to make a meeting a little bit more engaging. You know, one of the challenges we often have is like people's attention wanes over time. So I think of this as the old school 1, 2, 3 eyes on me. You know, hey, if I could call your attention back, I'm going to ask a quick quiz and then give people a chance to answer it.
Absolutely.
So she's got a good overview out on our tech community side on that. Well, so that was an overview. Thank you, Dawn. Great job. As always, really appreciate you coming in and sharing these tips. And Liz, thanks for the shout out on the one-pagers. The intent of those, so if you go to ak.ms/Media Mondays, we're trying to always carry over, if we have one developed or merits it, just a simple one-page summary of that capability. They're editable in PowerPoint. You can download them, change them, put your logo on them, save them as PDF, give them to your users. We don't care. We're just trying to drive just some of these great capabilities in Teams meetings. We do post a lot of these tips. We have a community inside of Microsoft's tenant that anyone is welcome to join called Teams Superheroes. So if you click on this link, that'll take you out to, surprise, surprise, an Office forum that kicks off a Power Automate and adds you to that team. So that is like other IT professionals, Teams champions, just like-minded folks swapping ideas and best practices. We've got some Microsoft folks that are moderating it. Otherwise, that takes us to the conclusion of today. Thank you so much for joining us on another Meeting Monday, and we will see you next week.